First, is it a chance to get the amount of time that we're splitting so we have a sense of the runtime here?
The gentleman has 36 and a half minutes.
All right, thank you. And if we're all blessed, I won't use it all. Mr. Speaker, have you ever had a moment where the first words in your head are, I'm damned if I do and damned if I do, or damned if I do, damned if I don't, but there's a chance. Okay, for a decade, I've been coming behind this very microphone and walking through demographics, debt, and the deficit, and trying to explain that something that the left doesn't like and the right doesn't like is almost 100% of the growth of the deficit for the next functionally 3 decades is demographics. And we don't like saying that because it's harder to play the politics of blaming each other. So look, there's been dozens of things said, and that's just the nature of it, in regards to the reconciliation budget resolution that was just passed. And I manage part of the Joint Economic Time, and my job there as the chair of Joint Economic is to represent the committee. Now I get to represent myself. I worry, but the opportunity of having the basically authorizing committees do what's necessary to save our future. A little while ago, you saw a beautiful little baby here. Last week when we were here, I had my 2.5-year-old that we've adopted with me. Here's some basic pieces of math. For my 2.5-year-old, when he's 24, 25 years old, every U.S. tax rate has to have been doubled, all of them, just to maintain baseline services. So the whole presentation of walking through what happens when you get a moment here to actually disrupt policy and do things that are better, faster, cheaper. Because I will argue the army of lobbyists, basically the rent seekers, if you remember your high school economics, that are around us all, despise the concept of reform. They despise the concepts of modernization. And that's actually, so some of the basic things I want to go over tonight, and I'll try to do it efficiently. First off, I know I used this board a little while ago, and I'm sorry it's handwritten. I broke the printer. It's just simply making a point for the average American at the end of this year. If we don't fix the expiring provisions, your taxes go up $2,853, and functionally 62% of all taxpayers will be subject to higher taxes. Okay. Now, when you actually have our friends on the left basically saying, you're raising, you're going to give away to the millionaires and billionaires, that's not the distributional effect of 2017. Matter of fact, one of the great trivia points, and I've actually had some fun with this one, because it comes from a progressive analysis from a few years ago, that after 2017 tax reform, the U.S. tax regime actually became more progressive. Now, there were lower rates, but it meant the top tier of taxpayers were paying more of the federal budget. And you walk through saying, okay, can I show you well, you gave money to corporations. Yes, but we can show you that the vast majority of that actually went to wages. And people forget many of the things we did to force the repatriation back of capital, of intellectual property, of expensing, of R&D expensing. Don't, as a Republican, I beg of you, don't actually ever tell anyone this. A bunch of that was in the Obama budgets. Yes, they were in many ways bipartisan ideas from back then because we were bleeding out productive capacity in this country. We were transferring productive capacity in our assets overseas because of our tax regime and the ability to compete. Now, it looks like the reality of sounding like an idiot economist around here doesn't buy you a lot of friends, but the fact of the matter is The budget box that was just offered is an opportunity to not, and Mr. Speaker, forgive, my asthma and my lung infection are going a little nuts right now. It's an opportunity to stop your taxes from going up. But what I'm actually more interested in is what I believe are solemn promises I got from the leadership, that many of the things I've come behind this microphone for a decade talking about of how we can adopt technology, how we can adopt models to lower the cost and yet cover our brothers and sisters and give them more access and more opportunity and be healthier. Because the way we deliver services as a government is archaic. You know right now if you were designing a system, you wouldn't do it this way. But we're all terrified of whether it be the bureaucracy and their lobbyists and their unions, something the left has to deal with. Many of the business people that have learned how to make money off these programs, our problem, come marching into our offices, all upset because we're going to change their business model and make them compete. Guess what? That might be what we just accomplished in this vote, is less about fixing the expiring tax provisions, which we're going to do, but maybe it will also give us that window where we can change, prove the way we deliver these services. Because I can't figure out why this place is so intellectually calcified that it doesn't, that they're terrified of changing it. So, Mr. Speaker, let's once again walk through some of our basic math. This is just a pie chart. Yes, it's a pie chart. Yay, we love pie charts. For the estimates for this fiscal year. Basically, I want you to take a look at it. It's a little less than 75%, but it's close. Actually, it looks like that may be. What you see in red is mandatory spending. Well, guess what? The blue is all I get to vote on as member of Congress. And every dime of the blue is borrowed. So what happens if I come to you and say, well, net interest, well, we don't get to vote on interest. And my personal math is closer to almost $1.2 trillion in interest coming in this year, but I've been doing a running calculation of the higher interest rate. We don't get to touch Social Security. Social Security has its own trust fund, which is gone in 8 years. And then all of a sudden, we got to figure out, what is it, the first full year of Social Security trust fund being empty is $609 billion, something of that nature. Depends on workforce participation at the time you do that. That makes the dollars we were talking about today tiny. Well, we have Medicare, Medicaid, and some other mandatory programs. So why am I showing you this? What's so difficult here, and I know this is geeky stuff, but this is why there's such a fraud in the debates that happen around this place, is we don't treat the voters like they have an IQ. Stop talking down to America. I will argue many of them are a hell of a lot smarter than people like me. We don't get to actually put net interest into a reconciliation budget. Matter of fact, there's nothing we get to do about it. There's some things we could have if we could actually work together on the way we sell debt, maybe the types of interests. Professor Schuler at Yale 10 years ago wrote an article about trills, which is an equity interest in tax receipts. Other things, there's ways to break up the concentration on debt, making your society less fragile, are subject to possibly bond vigilantes. Social Security, well, it's illegal. It's part of the 1974 Budget Control Act. You can't touch it. Yet I saw half a dozen members on the other side go behind their microphone and say, well, Social Security, that's, what's a good word for an absolute untruth? Oh, okay, I'll work on that. So what we have is less than half of the red portion we can even work on in a reconciliation budget. So this is an incredibly important moment. Will the standing committees, which have gone years and years and years and years and not been able to actually provide improvements, redesigns, modernization be able to look at things like the Wall Street Journal 5-article series, and you all saw the ones this weekend on Medicare Advantage. Well, one of their headlines said, and I think it was actually more than a single-year period, but $50 billion of fraud. Are we allowed to work on that? Is that Republican or Democrat? Or is it just time to find a better way to actually think about these things? That's maybe what we just opened up, assuming that my own leadership, my own committee chairman, are ready to do hard work, really difficult things that, just like that baby, just like my 2.5-year-old, maybe we could save their future. Maybe I could save your retirement without ever cutting a service. The number of members who've come up behind the microphone and said, we're cutting Medicaid, we're cutting this. Really, find me that word in here. Doesn't mean it's easy. You know, for Energy and Commerce, they have to find 4% of their entire committee's authorization over 10 years. You're telling me you can't find 4% of improvements in this place? Yet the sound of Armageddon is just, and that's why this place is so incredibly frustrating. You're trying to save the future. And I'm not bouncing around. There's a linear thought here. So believe it or not, Mr. Speaker, promise me you won't ever tell anyone this. So here I am. I was reading an article from The New Yorker that just came out. Don't tell anyone. As a conservative, I actually on occasion look at The New Yorker. End of children. You do realize the Census Bureau of the United States says in about 7.5 years, this country has more deaths than births. You tell me, as a junior actuary, well, someone that wishes he was smart enough to be one, how I make the math of the future work in a society that has a shortage of young people. Is that Republican or Democrat? It's just demographics. But we're not allowed to actually do difficult things here because, Mr. Speaker, it would require math. And then the harder part, it would require us to tell truth. And so many people, like this very moment, there'll be someone on cable television on the left and the right doing their talking, getting people's dopamines to hit, but it's not honest math. The math is really hard. It's really complex. There's a way to make it work, but we have only a couple more years, I believe, to provide this stability. Maybe that's what we just did a few minutes ago. So let's, once again, this is the single board that gets me the most hate mail. Also is the truth. This is the 30-year projection. If you look at the 30-year projection from Congressional Budget Office, I didn't produce this, they did. And we believe it's already way out of date because of the change in interest rates. You'll find Social Security and Medicare and their interest carry are responsible for almost functioning every dime of debt from today through the next 30 years. It's $116-some billion or trillion dollars of debt. The rest of the budget actually has about a $9 trillion positive bounce because its growth is slower than the growth of tax receipts, according to the Congressional Budget Office. This is the thing the left, in my particular case, love to run hate television commercials. Dared to talk about saving Social Security, saving Medicare, reforming how we deliver services so they're stable, so people have a future. You want to understand why this place is so damn toxic is those of us who are actually trying to fix things also write the attack commercials for the other side. It's a sickness. But the math is the math, and eventually the math will win. Look, the understanding, if we don't modernize how we deliver services, and through that start to stabilize everything. It's not just the benefits, it's the growth of debt, convince the bond markets we're going to be stable so they don't raise our interest rates. Look, we did a couple weeks ago, we showed a chart that if this place does stupid things and we make the bond markets nervous, and we were to get a 1-point increase in U.S. interest rates, we showed in 9 budget years, the additional interest is bigger than everything we talked about today. You've got to start processing how fragile we've made our future. And you start to actually look that if we don't start to actually use this opportunity to say, we're going to use the reconciliation open, we're going to not raise people's taxes, but we get to have a robust debate, discussion, ideas with the left, the right, particularly those on Ways and Means, energy, commerce, those things, saying, here's what the mix should look like. Maybe you don't extend everything. Maybe you mix them up. Maybe you find where there's leakage. Maybe you find where there's economic growth opportunities. Bring your proposals, bring your economics, bring your statisticians. The debate is on. And now we get to actually have an honest debate based in statistics and math and maybe a future, because we so rarely do that around here. And we'll publish a couple more versions of this in more detail. But look, I'm blessed to also chair the Joint Economic Committee. So I have people that are much smarter than I am. You'll be happy to know all of our economists now bathe. It's a running joke, particularly if you know economists. We worked through the math that said, what would happen if you did both things? You paid for as much of this reconciliation budget, the spending, the extension of the tax cuts as possible, and you do it. That's how you get your maximization of growth. Turns out, if you don't do it, you actually get probably a small retraction, maybe a small recession, because people's taxes go up rather dramatically. Remember, for the average family, didn't I just show you, $2,853. Now, in a district like mine, it's somewhere in the 3,000 range. I have a higher income district. But you also have the other thing, the most we can do to try to find ways to pay for that. Turns out there's this concept of capital stack. The United States government is not the only one binging on debt. You look at China, other countries, this and that. As the demographics of the industrialized world start to functionally get really ugly, and we're having to provide services, the amount of savings is starting to be chewed up. So one of the benefits we had in the previous decade and decade before that is there were fairly substantial savings stacks that went into U.S. sovereigns and other things. We expect in the next few years we'll actually start to see that roll over. And then you get the concepts of term premiums and those things. I know it's geeky, but the fact of the matter is, if you don't have a substantial modernization of government, you can't make this math work. Mr. Speaker, can I ask you the time? I want to be respectful to everyone.
Gentleman has 12 and a half minutes remaining.
My best guess is I'll use about 6 or 7 of it. Mr. Speaker, I tried to actually sort of demonstrate. Do you remember the hair on fire comments, people saying things that just mathematically had no basis? They're not actually in the budget documents, those things. But the big one, and folks understand, the size of these committees are vastly different, but the one that people were focusing on, E&C, Energy and Commerce, they still have 96% of their spending authority within their jurisdiction. That's just going to continue. This little wedge here is what they're being asked to work on. I will promise you, if I'm given the chance, my economic team is given the chance, my leadership in Ways and Means and E&C will work with us, I can get every dollar of that by just modernization of delivery of services. And for my brothers and sisters on the left, and remember, I at one time worked on my state's Medicaid budgets. So I have some, it's been a long time ago, I actually chaired for a little while my state's health committee. So I have some experience on Arizona, which has a very unique Medicaid system. We buy basically managed care policies for our indigent population. It's remarkably good, it's remarkably efficient, and may have the highest satisfaction rate in the entire nation. So something worth thinking about. So let's get down to the brass tacks here on a couple of the last bits. You look at the next decade of spending, we don't get to touch interest. Okay? We don't get to touch old age survivor fund. That's your Social Security. Matter of fact, what we should be doing is having really interesting conversations, mathematically honest ones, not in front of the microphone, but probably in a back room with actuaries on how we're going to save it, considering the fact that the own Social Security actuary report says, now I think in midway 2033, the trust fund's empty. And for my Democrat friends that keep saying, what we need to do is just do a bunch more taxes and enhance the benefit. Okay. But you do realize you just chewed up every dime of your seed corn, if that's a colloquialism, for everything else. We have a chart we've brought here multiple times showing the proposal saying, hey, take everyone over $400,000 and just raise the cap. So every billionaire pays their full Social Security, both the employer side, the individual side. It only took care, I think our math was like 38% of the shortfall. Helping folks sort of understand the scale and also the rhetorical solutions that are so often thrown out are not mathematically honest. So then you come over here. Well, discretionary, okay, we can take a run at that. You know what discretionary is. It's defense. It's everything you really think of as government. Other mandatory, and then Medicare, Medicaid basically sits in this area. So what would happen if our brothers and sisters on the left would actually, instead of defending the inefficiencies, the distortions, I despise using waste and fraud because I think everyone's against waste and fraud. But even if you read the articles, the ProPublica, the Wall Street Journal, on the extortion of bad acts, if that's a way to phrase it, that are going on in these programs, and the willingness to fix that, should that be Republican or Democrat? Or should it just be our attempt to be good governance? Remember, we're the board of directors for the biggest concern in the world. It's malfeasance the way we run this place. Our rhetoric is often completely intellectually vacuous. There are solutions. For any of you that have staff, do you have a nice highlighted copy of the MedPAC report from top to bottom, where they walk you through lots and lots of solutions? Or do you want, I'll send you over the stack of Wall Street Journal articles. I'll even send you the ProPublica on durable medical equipment fraud and how there's ways the doc and I could simply fix that with about a 3-paragraph bill, and people would have better access, better health, and we would save potentially $100+ billion just on that one line item over the 10 years. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that's the opportunity we may have just unlocked. I also think sometimes I might be delusionally optimistic and hopeful. I am 62 with a 2-year-old. That's actually funny. But I don't think we have a lot more time to play this treadmill game. For brothers and sisters in the majority, we're going to have to carry this. We're going to have to do the hard things because the left has decided they want to burn us down. Fine. And I wish I could be honest and say we didn't try to do the same when they were in the majority. But we're at a moment where the morality of protecting this society, protecting this country, protecting the American dream, is growth moral, but is also the next generation not being, as the economists keep telling me, the first generation to live poorer than their parents, because that's what's coming. Let's use this opportunity to do hard things. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.